Hello! You could spend a few bucks or a few hundred on staying dry. Well, what's the difference? I have excised the waterproof membranes from 8 popular jackets. The cheapest was 50 bucks and the dearest was hacked from a $1,000 garment with tears in my eyes. Oh well. Isolating just the waterproof bit gives the truest brand comparison.
Gore-Tex, HYDRATEX, HYDRATEX, they all protect using the same effect.
Say water droplets are this big, and my sweaty vapor molecules look more like that. Then you make a microporous structure like this, usually out of expanded polytetrafluoroethylene, but unless you're a chemistry teacher or marketing hack, who cares? All that really matters is that water can't fit in, but body heat can get out. And how can we test that? Well, waterproofness is usually quantified in millimeters, which means precisely dick because the millimeter is a unit of length. I checked. What manufacturers are trying to say is that if you take a 1-inch square tube and put it on top of the membrane, and then fill that tube with water up to a certain height, let's say 1,500 millimeters, and then watch it. And if nothing drips through over the next 24 hours, I can call this a 1,500 mil jacket, which is the minimum requirement of a waterproof garment, by the way. Warning, manufacturers will try to trick you by describing something as 2L waterproof, or 2.5L, or 3L, because we presume this refers to the volume of water. And 3 liters would be about 4,650 millimeters on a 1-inch tube hydrostatic head test. Well, that's pretty good. Wrong. 2L is shorthand for 2-layer. It means nothing about how waterproof it is, just that you get your membrane plus some face fabric that gets laminated on top. And usually this is something oleophobic and durable because we don't want oil or scratches degrading our waterproof bit. 2.5L just means that you have some lattice pattern on the back of the membrane so it doesn't rub your skin completely raw. And 3L upgrades to a full extra layer of comfort fabric stuck to the bottom. So the trick for motorcyclists is to never be upsold on this 3rd layer. Our jackets have mesh, armor, thermal linings, so that rarely touches the skin anyway. Now, companies like Gore-Tex claim 28,000 millimeters waterproofness. That's like a 92-foot tube on the hydrostatic head test. But no need for equipment envy, gentlemen. There is a more modest, yet equally phallic alternative.
A pipe bomb, scientific apparatus, is partially filled with water. The test membrane is clamped to the bottom between rubber rings. At the top, we introduce pressure via the valve from my old tire.
A man of average mass with an average ass exerts about 5 psi on your average surface area motorcycle seat. But if he kneels on wet ground, well, that's like 15 psi.
Gore-Tex cries mercy at 30 psi.
It's also the only membrane guaranteed to keep you dry.
So long as it's undamaged, within a reasonable lifespan, and used for a reasonable purpose, the W.L. Gore Corporation replaces, repairs, or refunds any garment that pisses the bed. And they can afford to do this because Gore-Tex is so expensively tested.
Frogg Toggs is the poorest jacket on our list. And this Drypore Gen 2 membrane cost me 50 bucks. But it's also the only one with as rich a reputation as Gore-Tex.
For 23 years, Frogg Toggs has eschewed normal face fabrics, preferring to stamp their membrane with non-woven polypropylene. Feels exactly like a surgical mask, like a coffee filter, like something that should not withstand up to 18 psi. But it does.
Now we're moving into motorcycle-specific membranes. We have DRYSTAR, Alpinestars home brew, DRY belongs to Dainese, and Revit's equivalent is called HYDRATEX. Any of these will skimp about $200 off a Gore-Tex equivalent. But they're not necessarily worse. See, WL Gore is a control freak. If I want to make a Gore-Tex garment, I've got to buy the license, buy the material, make the jacket, using Gore-Tex's mandated seam taping, then send the whole garment off to be certified to Gore-Tex's standards in its final form. That process is expensive. And while some brands, Alpinestars, Rev'it and Dainese, they do shill out to get the big, beautiful sticker on their highest end gear, well, their middle price stuff can be made a lot cheaper and theoretically just as well with in-house membranes.
Speaking of, Alpinestars DRYSTAR leaks at a premature 7-ish PSI. Big D boasts of greater stamina, rating their D-Dry membrane at 30,000 millimeters. That'd be 42 PSI and change, enough to rival Gore-Tex and, oh dear, little D deflates at 25 PSI.
That was my fear with this membrane. D-Dry feels so thin and weak, it's hard to get water weeping through before complete structural failure, like a water balloon. We were careful not to nick or scratch the fabric while clamping. We tried multiple times, but it always burst at 25 PSI. And maybe in a lab you could squeeze through the 40-some PSI that they claim, or maybe not.
Revit puts their best foot forward with a 3-layer flavor of HYDRATEX called Z-Liner. It wets our blotting paper at an identical 25 PSI.
Lastly, we test the cheap bastard batch. AQUARES from Olympia, DRYOSPHERE from Scott, and RAINGUARD, which is shared by the brands Fieldsheer and Tourmaster. All of these membranes play in the rock bottom bargain bin.
Immediately, RAINGUARD soils itself. The so-called waterproof barrier becomes a sieve at such low PSI, my gauge won't read it. Let's call that less than 3. Scott's DRYOSPHERE membrane weeps at a legitimate 12 PSI, and Olympia, well, they love to make waterproof liners that can also be worn as standalone jackets, so their AQUARES membrane usually has full face and comfort laminates, being rather beefy for a budget liner, and withstanding a respectable 15 PSI. What did we learn? Gore-Tex is vindicated as the driest option. Revit and Dainese are also great places to look. If you're low on cash, Frogg Toggs offers the best defense for your dollar.
Wait, waterproofness is nothing by itself. I mean, hell, 1-cent garbage bags are impermeable. The trick is to make something hold water, but not vapor. So we need to test breathability.
Molecular beer pong. Each cup is filled with 50 grams of silica desiccant. The membranes are stretched taut and stuck to the lip of a cup.
After that, we pour hot water into this central reservoir to approximate your sweaty body. And we want vapor molecules to travel through the membranes and into the cup, because that means soggy motorcyclists would be able to vent moisture while wearing these jackets.
Exactly how much vapor gets through each membrane will be determined by our desiccant, which becomes greener and heavier the more vapor it absorbs.
This is actually very close to the standard they use to rate breathable garments. Grams of water absorbed per square meter of fabric per day. You may see these units while shopping, so goody goody, we know what they mean. I won't bother converting our results into standard units, mind you. We can't recreate a standardized atmosphere in this literal garbage bin lab, so it wouldn't be terribly meaningful. Now, it's been 4 hours. Let's take a look.
Gore-Tex is the most expensive, around $200 for the membrane alone, but it only breathed 3 grams. I expect better. Frogg Toggs gained a single gram in vapor, that's poor. Alpinestars was second to last in waterproofing, so Karma says it should at least breathe well. Yep, 5 grams worth. Dainese was second to first in waterproofness, but wow, it also flowed 6 grams of vapor, that's incredible. Revit was similarly waterproof, although it appears much less breathable, only 1 gram. From the cheapo section, Scott is the real shocker at 8 grams, enough to win this contest. Olympia puffed a middling 3 grams, and Fieldsheer, yet again, achieved results too minuscule for my equipment to detect. Alas, we have learned something. 8 waterproof options scored by waterproofness and breathability. The best all-around option is Dainese D-Dry. Gore-Tex is still king of keeping water out, and Scott is the brand to shop if you prioritize venting moisture from the inside. Frogg Toggs still makes sense considering how cheap it is, but otherwise I'd avoid the bottom half of this list.
Thank you very much for watching. Like a good Canadian, I shall apologize for not mentioning seams. The welded and taped joints are potential leak points. They fail with wear and tear, and that could be a whole other test video. Until then, au revoir.
I don't know what translates to what today.